Are you instantly turning women off and you don't even realize it? In today's video, I'm going to share with you 6 different things that unfortunately a lot of dudes do that really turn women off. And it's time we fix that. So, let's get cracking. My name is Stirling Cooper, award-winning adult film star, and I was a former high-class male companion. And this, my friends, is my YouTube channel. Welcome. Now, a large part of why I was able to be a successful male companion, also known as an escort, back in Australia, where it's legal, is because I didn't turn women off. I didn't creep them out. I'm of the opinion that a lot of the problems that guys have with women come not from what they're not doing. It actually comes from what they are doing. They're actively shooting themselves in the foot. And a lot of this comes from like nervousness, a lack of confidence, and various things we're going to get into. But a lot of the time, it's about kind of peeling back layers of bullshit. Imagine, like, I kind of have this analogy where, like, humans, you know, like boys are born kind of perfect. Like there's nothing wrong with you. Like there's nothing wrong with a child. Like you're born with everything you need. And then the world just fucks you up. You get all these layers of bullshit and misinformation and bad belief systems and lies and manipulation put on top of you. And what ends up happening, you get to adulthood or you go through puberty and you have all this bullshit in here, and then that manifests itself as shitty behavior. It manifests itself as behaviors which, in this example, in this context rather, turn women off, turn the opposite sex off, right? So learning to sort of unpack and do away with all this unnecessary bullshit is sort of the first part in correcting a lot of this stuff. It's less about what you're actively doing, and it's less about learning to do new things and do more, and it's more about learning to do less and undo bad and correct bad behaviors, in my opinion. So the first thing that really turns women off is this idea of neediness. Now, what is neediness if we really break it down? Well, neediness ultimately comes down to a lack of options, right? But practically, what neediness is, it's an unwillingness to walk away. How do you show that you're willing to walk away? I mean, you can't just like, hi, and then walk away. That's not quite how you want to do it, right? So how do we even communicate that? Well, neediness is communicated in general from a sort of desperate need for this to go well. And the way that typically manifests itself is you're not polarizing, you're not edgy at all. So what would be the opposite of neediness? What would be the opposite of desperately needing this to go well? Well, maybe cracking a joke that she might find offensive. Deliberately cracking an offensive joke. Deliberately teasing her, right? That is an example of not being needy. Because a guy who desperately needed this to go well wouldn't dare take the risk of offending her. So if you take the risk of, I mean, you're not going to say anything that's, I'm not advising you to say something that's actually going to offend her and actually, you know will actually piss her off. I'm not advising that. But saying something a bit edgy, a bit ballsy, a bit cocky displays that you're not very needy. It displays that you don't desperately need this to go perfectly and that you have a willingness to walk away from this. You could take it or leave it. That's fundamentally the opposite of being needy. So number 2, trying to desperately please her. Now, I've talked about this at length on my channel in the bedroom context. So trying desperately to please a woman can, and coming across that way, being very overt and obvious that that's what you're doing, will put a woman in her head and actually make it much harder for her to orgasm in general. But on top of that, it's actually an unattractive trait, and it turns women off when you're very desperate to please them. Like, you need to please her. Oh my God, I hope she likes me. I hope I'm as good as her last lover. I hope she wants to see me again. If I don't please her, she won't see me again. That's kind of the attitude we're talking about here, right? Now, this isn't just in the bedroom context, but this also applies outside the bedroom. You know, caring desperately about the restaurant you take her to on a first date, if you decide to do that. You know, oh, I really hope she likes this restaurant. And that might manifest itself even before you get there, in terms of you texting her and saying something like, oh, I want to take you to this restaurant. Is that okay? Do you like that place? That's fundamentally the opposite of, that's really the opposite of leading, right? See, a guy who's leading the interaction, leading his woman, right? Displaying that leadership, which is an attractive quality to women, is here's where we're going, you're going to like it. It's an assumption of success. It's like, we're going here. It's also kind of a non-neediness too. It's like, we're going here because I like it. If you don't like it, oh, whoopty fucking do, I don't care. You're not saying that, but it's kind of implied, right? By not asking her if she likes that place, or not asking her if she really likes that. So this is kind of this idea of, not this non-neediness, but it's also not trying so desperately to please her at every single step of the way. And more importantly, trying to please her above pleasing yourself. This is something that a lot of guys get wrong. They sort of forego their own pleasure, they forego their own satisfaction above that of the woman. Even in, I mean, I'm not talking about like sacrifice, you know, like, I'm not talking about in, say, like a marriage context or in like a family context where you'll sacrifice to you know, provide for your wife and your kids. That's fine, cool, whatever. But I'm talking about like on a first date. Like, they'll put her on such a pedestal. They'll put her they need to satisfy her above his needs. So they'll make compromises, and it's subtle little things, but women will pick up on you making these compromises and compromising for her more than anything else. And that ultimately is a sign that she can push you around and tell you what to do, which is a sign of weakness, which is why it is an instant turn-off to women. Number 3 is incongruency. Now, I like to describe congruency as an alignment between your thoughts, your words, and your actions. So all 3 of those things are, you're saying a certain thing, you're thinking a certain thing, you're doing a certain thing, and those 3 things are all in perfect alignment with one another. That is congruency. So incongruency would be the opposite of that, when there's sort of a mixture of signals between those things, where it's like, okay, you might be saying confident things, but you're thinking that you're not very confident, and your hands are shaking when you're going to touch her and grab her hand and walk with her hand in hand, right? This is an incongruent thing, and this is a turn-off. It shows a lack of confidence. It shows, insecurity, okay? Sorry to say it, guys, but as the man, it is your job to be the leader. It's your job to be secure in the situation, because ultimately, if we zoom out and look at the context of where this comes from, it comes from, a survival and replication standpoint. If you're not confident in what you're doing, where you're going, what you're saying, right, then it ultimately means that she's not safe with you. Think about it this way, like when shit hits the fan, she wants a guy who can make the decisions and be confident in the decisions he makes. Whether or not they are actually like good decisions or not, kind of is irrelevant. The fact that you're confident in them is the part that is the sort of behavior she's pinging off of. That's the cue she's pinging off of, and that's what she'll find attractive. So the opposite of this, incongruency between your thoughts, your words, and your actions, is an instant turn-off. And it's something that women will often describe as quote-unquote creepy. The 4th behavior that is an instant turn-off to women is indecisiveness. Now, women are notoriously indecisive. So, kind of makes sense that they would not be attracted to that which is very, very unique to them. Indecisiveness is a very, very feminine trait. Women are attracted to masculine traits, masculinity. So you want to be decisive. So what does that mean in the context of, say, a date? It means having a plan. Really, it's as simple as having a plan. And having a plan before she even asks you. Where, like, this is the key thing here. It's like, you ask a girl on a date, it's not a question of like, it's like, here's how you would ask somebody out indecisively. Okay, here's an example. When are you free? And then she tells you a day. Okay, what time? And then she tells you what time works for her. Where do you want to go? Those are 3 very, very fucking indecisive questions. Let's flip that on its head. Let's show you an example of how you would decisively ask a woman out. Are you free Friday or Thursday? And she says, I don't know, Thursday. Great. 8 p.m. Meet me at 8 p.m. this restaurant. Here's the address. Wear a nice sundress. That's decision. That's having a plan. That's taking action. That's leading. That's being decisive. You are a man who knows what he wants. You're a man who has a plan that she can follow. She can fall into the submissive feminine role. She can follow your lead, and she feels safe and comfortable when you act like that. A lot of guys, because we've been, rightfully so, we've been kind of brainwashed by fucking this Disney Hallmark kind of narrative that perpetuates Western society of, oh, women don't like a man who's, overbearing and too domineering. That's not, but leading isn't that. Like being decisive and having a plan, guys kind of get the wrong message. They hear that and they think, oh, I should ask her what she wants. I should ask for her opinion. It should be a 50-50 relationship. Bullshit. That is a fucking terrible idea. That's terrible advice. You need to take the lead. That is attractive to women. Doing the opposite is only going to turn her off. Now, this fifth one is kind of interesting, and I will say you could misinterpret it if you're not paying attention properly. So pay attention to exactly what I'm saying here. So this fifth thing that will turn women off is being self-centered and only talking about yourself. Now, there is a time and a context to talk about yourself, and I would say that is in the context of telling stories. So the way you communicate things about positive characteristics and positive traits about yourself and your life and your personality, right? You don't do it overtly and say things like, oh, I'm friends with this celebrity. Oh, I have this much money in the bank. Oh, I own a Lambo, whatever the hell, right? You do it through the subtext of telling stories. So you tell stories, and then along the way through the arc of the story, there's little bits and clues and pieces of information she can piece together in her mind that kind of tell the story she wants to hear of all these great attractive qualities that you have. But you're not overtly shoving them in her face. You're letting her pick them up through the subtext of the subcommunication of stories that you tell. Now, back to my point that being self-centered and only talking about yourself is kind of an unattractive thing. Women love to talk about themselves. In fact, here's the funny thing, about the only time that you'll stop a woman from talking about herself, the only time it's hard to stop a woman from the only time that it is hard to get a woman to talk about herself is on a first date, oddly enough. After a first date, they don't shut up talking about themselves. And when you're not in a romantic context with them, they will not shut up talking about themselves. It's only that one specific instance when it's actually helpful to you to have them talk about themselves to you that they don't. It's kind of retarded. But they are retarded, so what do you know? Anyway, have her talk about herself. Ask her questions about herself. That is attractive. Being curious, being genuinely curious to find out about her is an attractive thing. The opposite of that, only talking about yourself and just as in constantly overtly bragging and only talking about yourself is going to be unattractive in the greater context of, trying to connect with a woman. Number 6 is agreeing with everything that she says. Have your own goddamn opinions, you spineless weasel. It is totally okay to disagree with her every now and then on the first date. Now, I don't recommend you talk about things like religion or politics on, dates, especially first dates. Save that kind of discussion until after you've already had sex for the first time. Don't talk about that kind of crap before you've had sex with a woman. It does not help at all. So it's totally okay to disagree with a woman on certain things. This shows that you have a spine. This shows you have a backbone. This shows that you have your own opinions. This shows that you're not needy. This shows that you're not desperate to please her, desperate to agree with everything she says. It shows you're not trying to manipulate your way into her panties. It shows you're, because when a guy just agrees with everything a woman says, she loses respect for him, and she thinks in her head she'll think, is this guy just agreeing with everything I say so that I'll sleep with him? Because newsflash, 90% of dudes, all these friggin' beta orbiter cuck soy boys that she spends that hang around her and give her all this free attention, are agreeing with everything she says so they can try and get into her pants. They think that is the way they think they can agree their way into a woman's pants, which is absolutely not true. you need to have a pair of balls, have your own opinions, and disagree with her when you disagree with her. Call her out on her bullshit. When she says something stupid, it's okay to say, that's dumb. Like, and don't be mean about it, be playful and cocky and funny about it. But I think, honestly, I think that women realize that they say stupid shit half the time. And when a guy doesn't call them out on saying stupid shit, they're like, they pick up on it and they're like, they lose respect for you and they realize, they think, this motherfucker is just trying to sleep with me. He didn't disagree with me. I said something totally retarded just then. Why didn't he call me out on it? So now that you know these behaviors that are instantly turning women off, you should also check out these hygiene mistakes that disgust all women.